live, pal.
What is up, my friends? Oh, lordy. That was a fun little Saturday night.
And then we're live,
That was
guys.
a fun little Saturday night. How you guys doing? My name is Sean Al-Shadi. You see the gentleman here. I got Eric Jackman to my left, Mike Heck to my right. Got Jose Youngs on the ones and twos. And y'all, we just watched Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal have a pretty damn fun fight. That was actually not that bad, if I'm being honest. That was much better than expectations. Nate Diaz ends up winning this quote-unquote rematch, if you want to call it, majority decision. We can get into the scoring. We can get into all of it, and we're going to. But I just want to start off right off the bat, and I'll start with Eric because, Mike, you just talked for like 3 hours on the watch party, so let's give your voice a break just for a second. Eric, that was pretty fun, right? Like, that was not a bad time.
No, that was a fun boxing match with a lot of action, and it was close, and we got to see the kind of what we expect in the best of Jorge Masvidal, and we got to see what we expect in the best of Nate Diaz in flashes. I dug it, man. I really dug it. I'm glad I watched it. I really enjoyed it, and I think anybody who tuned in and actually paid the pay-per-view cost got their money's worth. I mean, I can't speak for what happened up until that point, the rest of the night, because that wasn't very good at all. But the main event delivered, man. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. That's the best way to describe it.
I mean, Mike, towards the end there, they flashed up the punch stats on the screen. And you never know with these kind of things, especially with a fight like this, like how accurate those are. But I have it written down here. 740 for Mr. Nate Diaz and 658 or 654 for Mr. Jorge Masvidal. I'm not very good at math, but that is a combined, I believe, 1,394 punches thrown. That's a lot of punching in one night, Mike. Did you have a good time? Did you have a better time than you expected?
I think slightly, but here's something New York Rick said that I saw on our Slack channel that maybe Jose and I didn't get the full theater of, was like Chris Avila versus Anthony Pettis. How, as we were watching it without hearing the commentary in the crowd, like just very faintly, all of it, thought it was a very fun fight. And I actually thought Diaz Masvidal was like that fight on steroids and then on like another layer of some sort of performance enhancing drug, where it's just two dudes in there, no real aesthetic beauty to boxing whatsoever, just throwing punches as hard as they could over and over again. And I thought it was such a fascinating fight because Nate Diaz just did Nate Diaz things the entire time. Jorge Masvidal started the fight out in round one like he was trying to prove to the world that, hey, man, I've been in Vegas working on my boxing. Look at how good my boxing is. And then Nate just kind of Nate Diaz'd him all around the ring in that first round. And then I don't know what his team might have said to Masvidal, but then he started finding a middle ground between, I'm the bare knuckle brawler, I'm the guy you love, plus I'm the southpaw boxer. And he's found like a common ground for both things, just finding a happy medium. And the rounds he won, that's exactly what he was doing. He had some of column A and some of column B. But if he had just column A and just column B, that's when Nate started ripping him to the body. That's when Nate started to overwhelm him. That's when Masvidal couldn't touch him. And there were certain rounds, the clearest rounds won throughout that fight were from Nate Diaz. And he was able to kind of get Masvidal like off that center line when it came to being fighter A and fighter B and trying to find the middle ground between boxer and game bred. And it was just such a fascinating fight from a viewership standpoint, and just kind of seeing the evolution of Masvidal as a boxer, because the things that made him so successful as an MMA fighter didn't typically involve boxing all that much. It was kicks and punches and, just mixing them all together and doing a whole bunch of different things, using the kicks to set up his punches as opposed to straight boxing. So it was a fascinating watch all around, and it was super fun. And you mentioned she 1,300 punches. Holy crap, man. It was like Max Holloway fighting Max Holloway. It was insane.
I had a great time. I really did. I think there's a couple of things. You're right. It seems like a confluence of events because one, this seems like a much better, much more maybe motivated version of Nate Diaz than we saw against Jake Paul. Maybe it was the level of competition, probably a part of that, but also it did feel like he tried harder in this, which I think is appreciated. Also, I will admit I was surprised and impressed with how well acclimated out there that Jorge Masvidal felt. It seemed like he looked like he had been working on his boxing. He looked like an actual boxer somewhat out there in stretches. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And another aspect that I think was really fun, just the live viewing experience of all of this, was watching sort of the scoring in real time because scorecards were all over the board. I think you had Mike Brown out there in ATT. Obviously, he is a little biased, but I think he was calling it 8-2 in Masvidal's favor. You had Sean Porter on the broadcast, I think, also calling it in Masvidal's favor. You had a lot of people swaying toward Nate Diaz. It seemed like the pro California, pro Stockton crowd was very much in the Diaz corner. Ultimately, Eric, where did you end up? Because Nate Diaz wins this majority decision. I had it Nate 6-4 in terms of the rounds. What about you?
I gotta be honest. I don't know. I kind of there was a point maybe round 7 where I was just like, this is too close to call. If I put any mental energy into this, we're gonna get a boxing scorecard where it's 98-92, and it's not going to be reflective of any of the thought that I've put into this, and I'm not going to waste the mental energy. And it turns out that's what happened. So I'm derelict of duty at this point. I had it close, right? Like to the point where I stopped scoring it. It was probably like Jorge by a round. But that's where I just checked out and was like, damn, I'm gonna really watch this and watch the punches and enjoy it. But it definitely, I'll say this: whatever my score was to that point, it was not as wide as the decision. Right? It would have been much closer to 95-95 than 97-93 or 98-92. The most somebody won by was a round or two at that point.
Well, then let me follow up on this because we're both old school guys. We were both around in the good old days. Going pride style, even just pride scoring. When you left that fight, who did you feel like won it?
Probably Masvidal. I think.
Okay.
Look, pride scoring is based on damage, right? Is based on who's been more damaging in the fight. Jorge Masvidal was landing the better shots, no doubt about it. He landed a few really, really nasty shots that rocked Nate's chin. Now, legendary chin. It wasn't like it put him down or anything, and Nate ate him pretty well, but on damage, like it was Jorge Masvidal. The volume, the end of the fight, where Nate is starting to turn up the volume and turn up the heat and turn up the energy, and Jorge is starting to throw less and less of those damaging shots, is where you can start to see the story of the fight coming true, right? You can start to see that Nate Diaz is still there, and that's always a problem for his opponents. But start to finish, the person who did more damage was Jorge Masvidal.
That's fair. That's fair. Mike, I think I heard you on the post show. You lean Diaz, right?
Yeah, I scored it the same way you did, 6-4 for Nate. Never until the end of the fight, I at no point had any fighter up 2 rounds at all. I had Nate winning round 1, Masvidal winning 2 and 3, and then from there they flip-flopped rounds, and it was 4-4 for me heading into 9. I scored 9 for Nate, and I scored 10 for Nate. I thought the 9th round, as good as Nate was in that first round, I thought Nate's 9th round was the best round of the fight for either fighter. It was clear. It was dominant. And even when Masvidal had his moments, they were very, very few and far between. And even Nate was landing with a little bit of chaos and a little bit of damage in round 9. And you could tell, I even said at the watch party, like Masvidal had a look of almost a smirk on his face, but that was the only time a fighter went back to his corner frustrated at any point in that fight. To me, at least just playing armchair psychologist, was Masvidal going back into the corner after round 9. After just hitting this man a million times and it doing nothing to him. He just keeps coming forward. And at one point he landed like a 27 punch combination. Like this, it just doesn't make sense, any of this. But yeah, until 9 and 10, that was the only time I had a fighter up 2 rounds at any point in the fight. That's how good it was. That's how close it was. And I'm surprised we actually had a majority decision. I thought we were going to Splitty City, or we're definitely going to have a draw. of some kind. So, yeah, the fact that two judges actually agreed on one fighter winning that fight was pretty wild to me.
Eric, Nate Diaz is 39 years old. This man is really like legitimately about to turn 40 years old. I cannot imagine what it must be like to be in that ring and hit that man with every single thing that you have in your body, to hit him with what you feel like is 20 of your best punches. And he just kind of laughs at you and keeps coming forward. Like, that must be the most frustrating, demoralizing thing. How is this man still doing this at this age? I have no idea.
Yeah, he is truly a marvel. And when we think about Nate Diaz, like, there's a lot of fighters who the wins and losses matter for, right? There's a lot of fighters that you look at the resume and you go, okay, he was this good because he won this many fights and he had this many championships. But you don't measure Nate Diaz by that, right? You measure Nate Diaz by how many dog fights he's been in, how many times he's delivered, his demeanor heading into fight weeks, his ability to kind of tell everybody to piss off in the most impolite ways. He's truly like a unique one of one and somebody we're lucky to have had around the fight game. But yeah, like, he's up there in years, he's up there in miles, and he still seems to be as durable as ever. I can't say it any differently than he's just one of one. He's a completely unique fighter who I don't think we'll see quite again. And then to match that with the pace that he's able to put on people, you alluded to it at the start of the show, talking about how different he looked from the Jake Paul fight. The Jake Paul fight just didn't really look like Nate Diaz. It didn't look like a Nate Diaz fight. It was just kind of slow. It was just kind of lethargic. He really wasn't throwing that much, and Jake just kind of did what he wanted. This was a Nate Diaz fight, and he said as much in the lead up to the fight. He said he was lazy and unmotivated and getting off the reservation because he didn't have to cut weight, and he was just actually gaining weight and getting fat, getting up to 185. And for this, he looked dialed in, and the cardio and the results showed it, and it was fun. And when Nate Diaz fights, I'm watching, and it's a fun fight.
Mike, you like a good call out. When it comes to post-fight interviews, you're my main source that I go to for judging whether it succeeded or it failed. You're somewhat of an expert in this category. Nate Diaz comes out here, wins his first fight in quite a while, at least since the UFC exit, correct, against Tony Ferguson. Goes on the mic, calls out Jake Paul, which I did not expect, but it's right there for you. And then says, I want to go back to the UFC. I want to be a champion. Leon Edwards, you suck. You can come get it. How do you grade this post-fight call out? Does it make you interested in what Nate Diaz, the seeds that are being planted here for Nate?
I mean, if it's not Joaquin Buckley calling out Conor McGregor, so automatically this is a better call out than that one was. But look, this is Nate. This is Nate Diaz. From the very first press conference they did for this fight in Las Vegas before UFC 300, Nate Diaz was asked like who he wants to fight. Leon Edwards was the first name that came to his mind. But it wasn't a disrespectful. Like, this is the one where it's just like, F you, Leon, like, oh, you're dead or whatever. And he's meant that to Leon, Jake Paul, and anybody else who would even care to think about fighting Nate Diaz. But he's wanted to fight Leon, and he's put Leon over as like one of the best fighters in the world, as one of a guy at the top of the game, a guy who, he thinks other fighters should emulate. Like, Nate has put Leon over anytime he's asked about fighters who are killing the game right now. He thinks of Leon first, which is pretty wild considering how people have viewed Leon Edwards over the years, even since being the champion, and especially since that fight with Colby Covington. That's just how Nate has treated Leon. So Leon's always been at the forefront for Nate. So I don't think it's really that surprising. Nate could literally call out me, you, New York Rick, and Jose in a 4-on-1 matchup, and everyone would be like, yeah, that's cool because you're Nate Diaz. You can call it anybody. You can call it freaking Godzilla and King Kong. And people be like, yeah, love that idea. Let's go. So I don't think rules apply for a guy like Nate Diaz because he'd go to the press conference and call it 4 different guys. And we'll just be like, yeah, okay. Sounds right.
I mean, if that's getting thrown out here, I might be in. I kind of want Eric to be our manager to negotiate that salary, though. He seems like he's got good manager vibes to be able to get us the bag in that.
Yeah.
You can count on me. I'm ready.
Eric, does this so like I don't know, this whole lead up to this, right? It was bad. Like we don't need to sugarcoat any of this. Like this whole thing was weird. They did seemingly 400 press conferences for this. Nate Diaz was interested in none of them. But like this entire week, neither of these dudes felt like they were remotely invested in this. And yet here we go. We get to Saturday night. It's a sold out arena. Casey's in the building. He says it feels like a big championship fight. That man's been to a lot of fights, so I believe his opinion. You look at the website, I was expecting very little just behind the scenes for us. This thing did crazy numbers tonight for us. This did like UFC pay-per-view level numbers for us, just in terms of interest that we were seeing, people driving to the website, people interested in finding out what's happening. Are you surprised? Like, are you legitimately surprised? This feels like a success, and I did not expect myself to say that on a night like this.
I'm not surprised because they picked the right date, right? When the UFC is not on and you have the names Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal, there's at least an expectation or a hope that like somebody will check it out. Now, how much actual revenue, how much profit is this going to generate for them? And by them, sorry, I mean the promoters, not necessarily Nate and Jorge, because I assume that Nate and Jorge are going to be rewarded very handsomely for this effort. Otherwise, I can't imagine why Nate Diaz subjected himself to 6-7 different press conferences, because that just doesn't seem like him unless he's getting a massive bag. So I'm sure Nate and Jorge will make a lot of money on this. Will Fanmio, will Nate's promotion, will Jorge's promotion make a massive amount of money on this? Probably not. Like I'm going to assume not, because they did put a lot of effort into this. They did do a lot of promotion, even though it seemed like it was kind of falling flat. But what I'm not surprised by is the general interest. I'm not surprised at the idea that ultimately fight fans did go, I'll check it out. There's no UFC. I'm going to check it out. That part does not surprise me. How they checked it out, right? Are they actually watching on the Fanmio pay-per-view? Are they watching on UFC Fight Pass? Are they watching on DAZN? Is something to think about. But the fact that enough people were watching this that it felt like it was the talk of the combat sports world, at least for the night, does not surprise me. When the UFC is away, the mice will play. And this is something that other people trying to do events should take advantage of it and be cognizant of, because it works.
And we should note this fight was originally going to be on the day of UFC 302, which would have been Dustin Poirier, Islam Makhachev. And I do not think we get this level of interest and this level of numbers if it is on that same day. So certainly good call by them to
$80.
What everybody was.
For $80, we were going to get this fight.
Yeah, great call. Great call postponing it. Great call changing things up. Mike, I want to ask the same question to you, because I feel like all of us, this felt like a disaster coming into this week. And by the end of the week, basically, by like the time I woke up today on Saturday morning, I expected this to be a disaster. And then it turns out it's not at all a disaster. And it's actually a really fun fight with a sold out crowd and a ton of attention on it, a ton of eyeballs on it. Are you surprised? Are you surprised at all that this is sort of the end product for the very, very lackluster buildup that we were getting?
No, I like the arena numbers didn't really surprise me. I looked maybe on, I think it was after the press conference, where I was just like, what are we doing here? But I looked at the ticket sales and there were only like a few hundred tickets left. And I was like, oh crap, like this thing's really selling. And Masvidal is obviously a popular fighter, but Nate Diaz is an absolute rock star. He is a superstar. Everybody knows who Nate Diaz is. No matter where that man goes, a crowd of people will pay lots of money to watch him do literally anything. And this is just another example of that. I figured the website would do pretty well tonight, because I don't think a lot of people are going to spend $50 on this card. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, if you did not pay the $50, you did not watch this, I think there's going to be a part of you that will be somewhat left out, somewhat disappointed, because that fight really was as fun as we are saying. This is not hyperbole. We're not just making things up. This is a pretty fun fight, and I think you should go back and watch it however you can. If it gets on Fight Pass in like a month and you can watch for free, then wait till then. But you should definitely watch this one. Pay-per-view wise, this thing is going to do like real bad. $50 is ridiculous. If they did this for $24.99, I think it would have done really well. It's always a problem when the man who is promoting the card, Mr. Fanmio himself, is asked at the open workout, hey, Mr. Fanmio, what is the thing you're looking most forward to when it comes to this fight? And his response was, not by the pay-per-view, not this is going to be an all-out drag-out affair, not, hey, if you miss this fight, it'll be the biggest mistake of your life. His answer was, the thing I'm looking forward to the most is the fight being over so I can go to Hawaii on vacation with my family. How many pay-per-views did that friggin' line sell? You dope. And you could put it on as many different networks as you want. And that alone was just like what are we doing here? So pay-per-view revenue wise, this thing is going to suck like real bad. Someone asked on the watch party in the comments, I didn't get to pull it up, which numbers will be higher, this pay-per-view or UFC 301? I'm actually leaning UFC 301 on this one. I think UFC 301 is going to beat this on pay-per-view.
I mean, I think UFC 301 is absolutely going to beat it just because I think the baseline for a UFC pay-per-view, even the worst possible product they put out, is just higher than anyone else can possibly put up. But I will note, just, we threw out a couple polls on the watch party. One of them in particular was, how many of you guys paid for this? Like, who here amongst these thousands of people paid for Diaz Masvidal? It didn't look good for them. I think it was maybe
82%. No.
It was like 13%, maybe. Got to guess.
It's important. It's important to note that anybody who voted on that poll, we tracked your IP address, and you'll be hearing from the authorities. So just note that, and maybe be careful next time.
This was the Achilles Junior revenge. Eric Long plotted this out. This was the long con. We finally got you. It's over.
It's you.
Yeah, no, I don't know, gentlemen. I mean, obviously we can continue to talk more about this. I don't think we need to talk about the undercard. There wasn't a lot going on there. I know, Mike, you said you and Jose enjoyed it. I think you guys were having fun within each other. All of us were watching it alone. We did not have another to bounce off of, and it was not that great of a time. So we're going to leave a lot of the undercard stuff alone. We'll get to viewer questions here in a second. But one thing I do want to ask, if you guys are the managers now of Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal, or just an advisor, just someone close to them, giving them advice on their career. Tonight feels like success, even if the pay-per-view numbers are not that great. Both these dudes got the bag. We know that they got a lot of money for this fight. The numbers, the real numbers aren't out there publicly, but they got a ton of money for this fight. What are you telling your guy to do next?
Which guy? Who am I representing in this case?
Eric, you'll be Nate Diaz's representative then in this situation.
Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is the fight. I will be calling out Conor McGregor and going after Conor McGregor and saying Conor McGregor's name infinite times until I fight Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor.
Can't argue with that. That feels right. Right? Like, keep calling for the sphere, something slip in place of Michael Chandler, like whatever it is, that feels like that's the next step, right?
Conor McGregor has made it extremely clear that he does not want to fight Michael Chandler anymore. He has moved on. He does not care about fighting Michael Chandler anymore. Dustin Poirier is somebody he's taking shots at. He bet on Nate. I don't know the legitimacy of this, but he at least claims on social media that he bet $500,000 on Nate Diaz. He's talking about Nate Diaz. He's talking about anybody but Michael Chandler. If I'm Nate Diaz, I take that as a really, really positive sign that I could slide right in there and knock Michael Chandler out of that spot and create a fight that I think everybody would be much more interested in. So yeah, Conor McGregor, I'm saying Conor McGregor's name until there's nothing left to say.
Somewhere out there in Georgia, Jed Meshew is asleep and a smile just crept upon his dreaming face, and he does not understand why, but we all get it. We all know why. Mike. Oh, thank you, Jose. There you go. Mike, you're the representative of Jorge Masvidal. You just lost this fight. What are you telling him to do now?
All right, so the correct answer is you get this trilogy fight with Nate Diaz, but then you get Fanmio out of the equation. Like, take them out. You have drummed up enough interest here, and at least the combat sports community, most specifically the MMA community, understands that this is a fun watch and they would watch it again. Now, bogging it down with 5 other main card fights and a bunch of boxing matches that the MMA community cares nothing about, yeah, you probably want to avoid that. And you probably want to do some broadcast swaps as well. But you have the blueprint of what you need to do and what type of card you can build behind it. What I'm going to answer based on what New York Rick just said is your answer is Michael Chandler. And you want to know why? Because if I live in a world where Dana White gets on a cell phone and starts yelling out fight announcements, and he announces that Conor McGregor is fighting Nate Diaz and Michael Chandler is challenging Islam Makhachev for the lightweight title over Arman Sarukian, I'm going to throw my computer out the window at 150 miles an hour. I'm going to lose my mind. So if you want to generate some interest, Michael Chandler doesn't want to fight for the belt and wants to get a money fight with someone who's popular, who's riding a wave of positivity right now. And let's be honest, a fight Michael Chandler has a good chance of winning. Yeah, Jorge Masvidal, go fight Michael Chandler. Like, go fight him. Don't fight Wonder Boy again. Go fight Michael Chandler. Just do that. Do a favor to all of us. Because again, if Michael Chandler fights for the lightweight title next, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to blow a gasket. There has to be some sort of merit in this sport. And I know it's wild and crazy, and normally I don't say that. But in this case, this is ridiculous. This would be the most ridiculous title shot of all time. So, Jorge, do this for all of us. Okay? Call out Michael Chandler. If Conor's going to go fight Nate, I don't blame him. He should do that. Someone's got to keep Michael Chandler busy, and it ain't going to be Islam Makhachev, for the love of God. So that's where I'm going.
Eric, I see you shaking your head. What's up?
Well, I was shaking my head at the point where Mike said there's got to be some kind of like legitimacy and order to the sport, and I just don't think that that's true. There doesn't have to be.
You want to do this at light heavyweight and heavyweight? Go ahead, but not in the best division, not in the Cadillac division. Come on, you want to do that in the Volkswagen Jetta of light heavyweight? Go right ahead, but do not do this in the Cadillac Escalade of MMA. Don't do it. Please don't.
Yeah, that Chandler title shot's coming, baby. See you at the top.
We're going to get kicked off YouTube if that happens.
I'm so deeply excited for the reaction show in about 3 weeks for Islam Makhachev versus Michael Chandler. That's going to be so fun. It's going to be so fun. You have to be on that. Even if you're off, I need you on that show.
Can I ask you guys a question about this rivalry, Diaz and Masvidal? Coming into this, I very firmly held the belief that I care so much less about them boxing than potentially doing MMA, that my interest was lower than it could have been otherwise. Coming out of the back end of this, the fact that we're not dealing with potential cuts and grappling and get 10 rounds kind of worked in the favor of this fight, to the point that I'm not wanting them to do MMA, which is kind of interesting because I don't think I would have ended up there. I didn't expect coming in to end up there. The third fight being boxing is probably the one I want, which again, I don't think I would have expected coming in. I'm curious if you guys agree with that.
I think I'm right there with you.
Same.
Isn't that wild?
Very strange.
Isn't that kind of crazy?
I think it's a matter of expectations, right? Because like we saw the Nate Diaz boxing thing against Jake Paul, and it was super uninspiring. It didn't leave you wanting to see more of the Nate Diaz boxing thing. And then we haven't seen Jorge Masvidal box, but we have seen so many MMA fighters transition to boxing, and it just generally looked bad, not fun, sluggish, just like out of their element type of thing. Like, I think it would have been it's a natural reaction to see what this was going to be and just kind of be like, oh man, this is not the way that this should have been like booked at all. But I don't know, coming out of it's a matter of expectations. I am now firmly on that train. I don't think these dudes are going to fight again, but if they did, I would want the 10-round boxing epic that we just got, right? Because it was very fun. Every round felt like it swang the opposite direction. It was a Diaz round, and then the next round was a Masvidal round, and the next round was a Diaz round. Like there was a story being told there, and maybe it wasn't the most technical fight, maybe it wasn't the best boxing match, but just as far as a fight, like I actually really enjoyed that.
they were not the best boxers on the card, but that was the best boxing match on the card. Like, that's no doubt. Like, there are better boxers who fought on this card, but like, it was by far the best boxing that we saw, which is awesome and unexpected and really enjoyable.
Yep. I also think boxing evens the playing field up just right. Because I think in an MMA fight, I think Masvidal wins 8 out of 10 times just because
But
of the
even-
kicks. And he's very tough to take down. His grappling is super underrated. I think he just kind of kicks Nate in the face a whole bunch. Like, it kicks him in the body. Like, he beat the hell out of Nate at 244. Like, it was just a perfect stylistic matchup for him from an MMA sense. Now, boxing, when you take the kicks out of the deal, Masvidal could still win 50-50, like could win 5 out of 10, like very possible, but he could win more. Could win, I don't know. I just feel like it evens the playing field a little bit closer for Nate. Not saying Nate could never beat Masvidal, that he just had no chance of winning that fight, but I feel like MMA, I would confidently pick Masvidal. While in boxing, like, I felt Masvidal was probably the pick, but from a betting perspective, like, you're giving me Nate Diaz at plus 210, like that would be an easy bet to take Nate at those kinds of odds. You know what I mean?
I think even more than the kicks, because certainly I think you're right. Like, there's the variety of techs that Jorge does is way different than Nate. Nate just uses his hands. That's just what it is. And Nate's not going to stop a takedown if Jorge wanted to. If Jorge wanted to take him down, he would take him down. But more than anything, I think it's the number of rounds. Like, if you give Nate Diaz 10 rounds, he's going to do better than if you give him 5 rounds, regardless of how long they are. That's just the reality. Nate Diaz has always been the fighter who said, like, I never lost a fight. I just ran out of time. Except he's not bullshitting. Like, he's not just being an idiot saying some kind of like bullshit cliche. If you give him more rounds, he probably will win every fight. If you give him infinite rounds until somebody taps, until somebody dies, he will probably win those. And so 10 rounds of boxing gives him this advantage, or not even an advantage, but evens the playing field, to your point, that I think is a massive thing for why this was so awesome and competitive.
Yeah, it does feel like Nate Diaz could come into this at age 50 and still put up 10 hard rounds as long as he's like aware of what's about to happen and he's able to prepare.
If he's
a little bit.
motivated, if it's not the Jake Paul shit where he's just completely checked out, then yeah, it totally feels like that.
And certainly in a say a 3 or 5 round MMA fight, we are not seeing 1,398 punches thrown over the course of the action from these guys. Just ridiculous numbers from that regard. Gentlemen, let's hit the readers. Let's see what the peeps, or the viewers, I should say. Let's see what they're saying. What are the people saying, Jose, about this fight?
It's mostly people arguing about who won.
Naturally.
A lot of words that none of us can say on air. But yes, I'm gonna try to.
Lost their shirts.
Some people are giving super chats, and I'm still not gonna put your question up there because I'm not willing to put racial slurs on a screen.
Oh,
so don't do that. Don't do that. It's just the people.
For your contributions.
It's just wild that Ryan Garcia will be in this chat right now. That is a big move for us.
Ooh. All right, let's see what we got.
I love y'all, but y'all gotta chill if that's what's going on in the comment section. Good lord.
Golly.
We got a super chat from Everett Price. I'm gonna prioritize the kinder ones.
Shout out to the Big
Everett
Van
saying
Vader.
Yeah, right. Good call. That was the best boxing match that I've ever seen that didn't involve boxers or butterbean. That was incredibly well said. That was incredibly well said, Everett. That's an A+ super chat.
Was that the best boxing match that was MMA fighters? Because I'm not remembering them off the top of my head, but it had to be, right? Like, there was nothing even in the stratosphere, unless I'm crazy.
So like, are you counting Anderson Silva versus Chavez Jr.?
Yeah, even I'm counting that. I'm counting any. I guess because he's a boxer, does it not count? Yeah, I'd count that.
Yeah, right?
I still think this was probably better, more compelling.
It's definitely better than Anderson.
That from a pure joy standpoint, kind of like those. But I think just from a fun perspective, this had to be the best one we've seen of these dumb crossovers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought Anderson like won every round against Chavez. Like I was just
Yes.
like, wow, this is actually happening right now. Like I just think Anderson kind of dusted him up, even though the scorecards were a little redonkulous, like making it way closer than it should have been. But this fight was just didn't know where the cards are going with this one. It was if I had to go back and rewatch one of these fights, it's definitely Diaz Masvidal.
The first Woodley and Paul was pretty great.
Yeah.
That was a fun fight.
That wasn't bad. Yeah, that was a good one.
Also, shout out Butterbean. That man really kind of missed his era because he would have had a lot of fun in an era of social influencers and Turkey Al Sheikh. Like, come on, you telling me we couldn't get some weird shit from that guy right now?
Turkey wouldn't stand for that. Turkey's a traditionalist. He wouldn't have Butterbean on there. He'd see that as a freak show. The rest of us would get.
You told me Butterbean couldn't be on Social Knockouts 4 or whatever.
He'll be on that and Misfits. He'll be on that and Misfits for sure. Hell, he's still maybe
underrated fight. I know it's like mixed hybrid rules. Mike Perry versus Michael Seals at Triller Triad Combat. Super fun fight. Super fun.
Yeah, that was a great fight. That was a great fight.
Was Perry in the BKFC yet, or was that like proto BKFC Perry?
It was like just before. Like I think he had signed with BKFC, but I don't think he had a fight yet. I think they set up this event first, and they let him compete in this first before making his BKFC debut. And he still friggin' won. He won against a 30-fight pro boxer. It was crazy.
He tried to tell us. He tried to let us know ahead of time. No one listened. This one's coming from Ronnie, who says Diaz won because he punched more air. Dude was getting caught with hooks to the jaw and body the whole fight. I don't know. He was Nate Diaz. He did a lot of Nate Diaz stuff.
I think something that's important to think about when you think about boxing versus MMA, like the criteria is not the same. The criteria of MMA in terms of damage is significantly way more important when it comes to MMA and not when it comes to boxing. Ring generalship and things like that are a factor in boxing, and Nate was pressing Jorge the entire time. Now, as I said, like I had a really close fight, and there's no doubt, like Ronnie is right to a certain extent. Like Jorge was landing the better shots, no doubt. Like that was very clear. But Nate was boxing pretty decently. I think Masvidal did have some good defense and was really like parrying a lot of the stuff and bouncing it off his arms, but it was competitive. I don't think it was like I don't think Diaz was punching air, and I don't think it was like a bad decision.
Yeah, dude, there's a reason why MMA has shifted to the more damage part of it, because they didn't want their 10-point must system to be exactly like boxing for this exact reason. This is why, like the MMA scoring was exactly like the boxing model for a long time. Then you have to mix in all the other stuff. That's why they changed the criteria to more damage than anything else. So it's not exactly the same. So New York Rick makes a great point. The scoring isn't the same. It's two MMA fighters, but they're under boxing scoring criteria. That's why it works that way. And also, to the other point of the whole, he swung and missed the whole time, it's just not true. And when Masvidal was successful, he was not against the ropes or not in the corner. Like when he was backed up against the rope, Nate was boxing him up. He was landing like 25 punch combos against the ropes against Masvidal. And he would come back and land one left hand, but Nate would hit him 25 straight times. Even if they were paper cut shots, it does not matter. If he lands 25 punches to Masvidal's one left hook, the judges are going to score in a boxing match that round for Nate Diaz. And those are the rounds he won. It's not a robbery. It's not crazy. 8-2 is a little ridiculous. I'm sorry. That scorecard
8-2 is
dumb.
Insane.
It's terrible.
It's a terrible card. I mean, it's a boxing card, but it's also still a terrible card.
Yeah, terrible.
Also, if I may submit to the court, just an argument of who fucking cares? Who fucking cares? None of this matters. None of this matters. This was such a low stakes thing. No one's gonna remember who won this fight.
This is what our comments are saying.
It was a fun fight and we had a good time.
Yeah, perfect.
Motion granted. Motion granted on that.
Granted.
Nobody gives a shit about the scoring.
This is not the fight to waste your words and your tears crying robbery. Geez,
exactly.
Achilles Jr. coming in with the super chat. Masvidal didn't win tonight, but he should feel bad. I know someone who loses way more than him.
Who? I want to know who. Who is it, Achilles Jr.? Let us know.
Super chat.
Super chat in and tell us.
Tony Ferguson.
Oh,
jeez.
How dare you? How
Yeah,
dare you?
Shaheen's
Just trying
on
to
this
get
show.
off
Jeez.
Just trying to get kicked off this post show. I see how you're doing. It's late over there, Mike. Heck, you're trying to go to bed. Coming from Tenzin, Jorge and Darren Till next. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. That actually might be the answer.
Or
I'm down.
Or
Oh yeah, we're all forgetting Chael in this equation.
Oh, Jesus
Anakin
Christ, I
Skywalker
forgot about
coming in,
this.
Jorge versus Chael. Seeds have
Can they
already
just
been
have
planted
like
for
a
that.
debate instead of a fight?
No.
Because I'd watch the hell out of that.
I would
A
not.
spelling bee.
Hell no.
How's a bill
think
become a
that's
law,
almost-
Mike? How's a bill become a law, Mike? You don't know.
Yeah, but
That's-
Chael would make it fun.
I
She'll make
honestly
it
think
fun.
that would be worse than the boxing match. I'm not watching that. That's for damn sure. Jorge proved himself extremely capable tonight, in my opinion, and that is not. There's zero interest in me. Well, the build-up could be possibly fun. We don't need to see Chael box. That facsimile of boxing that happened with Anderson Silva was enough. I think we're good now.
How
Would you do
I got a
Masvidal
proposal.
Silva?
Yeah, I would.
sure.
Sorry, my internet's lagging a bit. I have a proposal. How about we do Chael Sonnen versus Jorge Masvidal, and we do the whole lead up, and the lead up will be very fun. It'll be reminiscent of Chael Tito. It'll be a lot of Jorge getting real frustrated, and we'll be able to laugh about this. Maybe we'll get some stories about jackals and lions and such. And then on fight night, they swerve us, and it's actually Darren Till that comes out in Chael Sonnen's place.
Mystery Vortex style.
I'm okay with Till Jorge, but like I don't know. I feel like Jorge can do better he can aim higher is where I'm ultimately at. I think he's able to aim a little higher than Darren Till. It'd be fun. I don't hate it, but I feel like he'd be doing Darren Till a favor there.
That's fair. Chael beat up 5 dudes in one night, says YB Craft. Lazy Bed. Jorge versus Chael at Power Slap-A-Mania 2025. God, please no.
We got a comment from a long time, first time.
Oh man, the man! Look at it. Look at his YouTube image. Look at the profile image over here.
Yeah.
Casey coming in looking muscly. Casey Layden. How many rounds could have gone either way to y'all?
It's a good
7.
question.
At
7.
least half of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think 1 and 9 were the 2 most clear rounds of the fight for Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
Like those are clear as day. There's no other way you could score those rounds. I thought 10 was the next clearest round for Nate. And then we could start kind of digging through some of the Masvidal rounds, but even the ones I scored for Masvidal, there was a case to be made for Nate winning those rounds. So I would say 2 through 8 were toss-ups. 1, 9, and 10 were clear Diaz rounds to me.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
Yeah, I agree. I think 3 is definitely a definite Jorge Masvidal round. I'm trying to remember. That was when it felt like he got his rhythm going. But a lot of those were toss-ups.
Did you guys notice, because Mike and I noticed, did Sean Porter's scorecard change after round 9? That was weird,
Sure
right?
did.
Like he had Nate Diaz winning, and then
Seemed
all
like
of a
it
sudden,
did, right?
the next time they showed it, some of the rounds he scored for Nate, he all of a sudden had scored for Jorge. So I don't know what was
Could you
going on
guys
there.
hear it? Could you guys hear the commentary?
We didn't have it. We had it muted, but
Just very faint.
When it pulled up, we were very confused in the watch party.
Yeah, so at the end on the broadcast, he said he scored the fight a 97-93 draw. So there was some real conflict of what his thought was from the beginning to the end, which matches with what you're saying about his scorecard changing. They appropriately roasted him for it. including Sean O'Malley roasting him. By the way, Sean O'Malley was great. Sean O'Malley was amazing.
Not bad, right?
He was freaking awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna save it for. I had it somewhere, but yeah, there's a lot of people that are. Yeah. There you go.
No, he was good.
I enjoyed it.
But to your point, yeah, Porter got lost somewhere in the middle of that fight. And you know what? So did I. I stopped scoring it. I was just like, whatever. We'll find out at some point because I don't want to spend too much energy and then there's just going to be weird scorecards. But yeah, O'Malley was freaking good.
It was great.
He was just adding.
In retrospect, it makes sense, right? Because he's really a fighter of the new generation where he's a streamer. He has like a podcast. He talks so much just like throughout his day-to-day, like publicly. So like maybe I shouldn't have expected him to not be that great. But I enjoyed him quite a bit. I thought he struggled a bit at the very beginning with the stand-up, sort of the stand-up with Mauro Ranallo and I think Sean Porter. But those are very weird and those are like awkward if you've never done that type of thing.
Yeah.
Like you could throw any of us in it, we would probably struggle too because unless you do that consistently, like that's not a very easy thing to pull off. But then once he was behind the mic, I actually really enjoyed it. It felt like he knew when to pick his spots.
Super chat from a caller.
And he was dressed like Disco Stew from The Simpsons, which I dug. The gold shirt was unbelievable.
That's an elite reference. I love it. Coming from our boy Alex B. Sup, boys? Diaz versus Masvidal 3 and BJJ basketball. Yeah, I'm here for just like making them do weird stuff, right? Let's do an obstacle course, eating competition, something different.
I think BJJ would be cool, but I don't think it would be as competitive and as fun as the boxing one. So that's kind of the one I would want to see. But if they say, hey, we're doing the BJJ just because we want to cross off all the different combat elements, like I'd totally be down. I think that'd be pretty cool.
I'm only throwing this up because he paid $10 to have this up.
Okay, Jose's judging your.
By the way, golf is the correct answer for round 3.
I don't know this for a fact, but I couldn't imagine that Nate Diaz plays golf.
There's no way Masvidal plays golf. They would throw their clubs into the lake, and they'd probably end up fighting each other on the golf course. So we'd get round 3 just the way you want it anyways.
This super chat coming from Chase. Resident Chandler hater here. Has his last 2 years been the biggest mishandling of a career we've ever seen in MMA? I genuinely can't express the joy I get from what Conor McGregor is doing to him, and I'm pretty sure this is Jed's alt account. But I digress. What do you guys think?
Is it the biggest mishandling? No. What has been mishandled? He's waiting for the biggest potential payday of his life. I mean, it's not really like there's not a lot of decisions here. Like it wasn't really like he had all these opportunities and squandered them. He's literally got presented with Red Panty Night, and now he's just waiting on Red Panty Night. So I'm going to say no.
Also, the outcome of this that isn't him fighting Conor McGregor is him getting one of the worst title shots we've ever seen, and Mike just going ballistic.
Don't you even put that out there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the fact that I'm even talking about this right now just tells you that it's not an egregious mishandling of a career because he's still the topic of conversation. I'm sure the UFC is still paying him pretty decently. Now he's got all these businesses and stuff, and he's still attached to Conor McGregor right this second. He's attached to him. Even if Conor doesn't give any care at all to Michael Chandler or any bit of energy towards him, he's still connected in this world with Conor McGregor. When you think of Conor McGregor right now, you think of Michael Chandler. So that's never a bad thing when you're attached to the biggest star in the history of the sport, for good or for bad. But yes, if he gets a title shot, then you have to reverse this question because it's either Conor McGregor or a lightweight title shot after getting dusted up by Dustin Poirier 2 years ago at Madison Square Garden. So might be the best handling of a career ever if he ends up in a title fight or Conor McGregor at this point.
Mike, I just want to play this out now really quickly. Like, let's just live in a world where this title shot does happen. It's Michael Chandler versus Islam Makhachev. And like, let's just say something weird happens. Michael Bisping-esque Rockhold 2 type of thing where Michael Chandler comes in here. It's a storybook celebration. He's waited all this time. It wasted his time. He gets the knockout in like 2 minutes. He is the lightweight champion of the world. And then he pulls a John Jones And he's just like, I'm not fighting anybody else with this belt. I am waiting for Conor McGregor to come fight me for the title. And Arman Sarukian does not fight for this belt for the next 2 years. What will the heck of the mornings, what will be the vibe of those heck of the mornings over those 2 years? Will you be able to keep your sanity?
I will have to take a leave of absence from MMA fighting because I cannot be responsible for what happens on these programs if this plays out the way that you're the picture you are painting right now. Because it's terrible. Like everything you just said made me quease a little bit. I'm queasy right now, Shaheen. Just thinking about this. It's awful. Everything you just said is terrible.
I really just kind of want this to happen now. Let's get a couple more and then we'll get out of here. It's getting late. Another one coming from Everett. I'm going to donate $5 more because the computer won't let me donate 209. Thanks for all the content. That's tremendous. We love you, Eric. Everett. It's coming from Spencer. Gentlemen, Jorge or Nate deserve to be in the UFC Hall of Fame. For me, Nate is borderline. Jorge should get in because of the aspirin KO. Appreciate y'all as always. That's interesting to hear because I would assume between the two, if you're going to just sort of shoehorn one in, it would be Nate just sort of longevity, big moments type of thing. But I don't think either of them get in, frankly, unless Nate Diaz gets in for a fight similar to maybe like the Conor 2 type of fight.
I think
maybe
Conor
that would
2
get
will
in the fight wing. Yeah. Other than that, I don't know that either of these two men belong, but what do you guys think?
I think Nate Diaz belongs. I think Jorge's a harder sell because his career was much more of like the journeyman until 2019, until he became Jorge Masvidal, till he became game bred and the star that he is now. I think Nate's a no-brainer. I think he'll end up there eventually.
Agreed.
I think they both get in. Just, I mean, Masvidal's close enough with his accolades compared to some of the other fighters who have gotten in. He is the original BMF champion, which the UFC weighs that more than a lot of other things. His 2019 is one of the best years in the history of the sport. To come from where he was to headlining in Madison Square Garden to getting back-to-back title fights, plus he's done the UFC, even though he was paid off financially in some significant ways. He helped the UFC in a lot of ways, especially during COVID. He headlined the first event in front of a crowd after COVID, and he headlined a huge pay-per-view on Fight Island on less than a week's notice to fight Kamaru Usman, and a pay-per-view that did incredibly great numbers on. So I think just the favor that he's curried with the promotion, you know, the UFC allowing him to go box and do all these different things, like they don't do that for everybody. They do that for people they revere very highly. And Masvidal is one of those guys who's at the top of that list. So maybe in a legitimate sports Hall of Fame type situation, maybe neither of these guys get in. But in the UFC Hall of Fame, I think both of these guys get in. And it wouldn't shock me if they got in like the same year.
Yes.
Interesting. I want to reframe that then. If say like we had a real MMA Hall of Fame, like a real place you could go to, in let's say it's in Las Vegas, and you could walk around and it's like a real history of the sport. In that case, do you think either of those dudes would get in the MMA Hall of Fame? Because I think Nate would maybe have a case, but he also might have a case of like being on the borderline of like the Hall of Very Good, but just for the pure stature of the events and sort of who he became, he might get in. But I don't know
Nate
that either
gets
of them
in.
would.
I think Pedro Gomez once spoke in one of my classes in college, and he had a vote for the Baseball Hall of Fame, and his criteria was, could you tell the story of baseball without this individual? And if you cannot, then they get in. And you cannot tell the history of MMA without either Diaz brother.
That's a good
fair.
point.
I like that. That's fair.
All right.
All right, let's get a couple more.
Yeah, there's a few more. A lot of people talking about pay, and this was a super chat. So I'm just gonna bring this up. So if you guys want to talk about them getting paid,
this one's coming from Steven. C-Sack said Diaz got $500K and Jorge $300K for their purses. Obviously not their total amount, but I'd say that's decent before everything else. Yeah, those numbers are not real. That's what C-Sack reports.
Close.
That's sort of how it's finagled out. But those numbers are far, far larger than you think they are.
You think Nate Diaz would go through all of this for $500,000. There's just no effing way, people. There's just no way. And I don't think Masvidal would go through this sitting at a press conference, smelling the smell of delicious cheeseburgers off to the side. He had to go through all of that for $300K. There's no chance. There's no chance. They made a lot more money. Trust me. They made a lot more money.
This one's coming from Giovanni. Was on a date tonight, tuning in late. What the fuck happened? I mean, you got to watch the watch party. That's the only way you can find out. Go to MMA Fighting.
Yep.
Great website.
Great
and watch
website.
the watch party.
Super chat for New York Rick from your friend.
Oh my Achilles. I'm not even going to say this out loud. He responded.
Why is he so mad? I've missed everything.
Why is
that
he
it?
mad?
Achilles.
St.
I don't.
Valentine's arrow.
I don't understand this math
Gave
equation.
him a thumbs up.
No, this looks like a math. This looks like a math equation, and I don't quite understand it. Like I see the, what is that symbol? That's like a estimated. I definitely see a less than symbol. I definitely see a 3, but the math is not mathing for me. Spell it out for me. Write it out, and let's get to the bottom of this, because this math is not working for me. So we got to figure this out. Super chat back in and let me know.
Let's see. Marco saying, fun fight. Should Diaz Connor 3 be in boxing? No way. No way, man. No way, dude. That series is an MMA series. The first fight would not be what it was if it was a boxing fight. Like we gotta finish this out the right way.
People.
We got anything else?
Yeah, we'll close it on this. It has unrelated to the fight, but Mike and I talked about it. If I can find it. There it is. We talked about this on the watch long party, so we'll end with this. Super chat.
Oh, this is coming from our boy Lazy Bed. New York Rick, how do you top your hot dogs? Pumpkin spice, yes or no? Rick, how do you top your dog?
For real? Pumpkin spice?
No, so we had a
Not on
conversation.
a hot dog.
Not on a hot dog. We just talked about how Mike and I have an affinity.
Both of
for
these
it.
gentlemen are pro pumpkin spice,
Yeah.
essentially.
Oh, so this is a separate question.
Yes.
How do you top your hot dog? Then am I pro pumpkin spice? Okay.
Correct.
How do I top my hot dog? When I was growing up, I was for a very long time just a ketchup on hot dog person. As I got older, I became a mustard and relish on a hot dog person. Now, I'll take like when you want to go like Chicago dog or even add the onions and go crazier. But if you're giving me like what's your simple, like quick, how do you top a hot dog? Mustard and relish is kind of where I've landed at. And pumpkin spice, like probably a no.
More for me.
Yeah, that's the right answer for pumpkin spice. Like I'm not here for
It's
any
the
of
whitest thing
pumpkin
about
spice. Whatever
me
that
is my vote
weird
for pumpkin.
the weird fake pumpkin flavor. Like I'm not a coffee guy anyway, so like I'm not here for coffee generally, but like pumpkin spice on anything, like I just don't like it. I don't like pumpkin flavored things. As for hot dogs, I just don't like smothered. So like anything that's smothered with like sauce and ketchup and just like too much of anything, like I'm just not here for that. Give me some onions, give me some like grilled onions. Give me some nice hot sauce. I'm a big hot sauce guy rather than like the other
Hot sauce
condiments.
on a dog. Okay, interesting. I've
Underrated.
never done that.
I'm there
It's
too.
a super
I'm there
underrated
too.
topping.
I'm a huge hot sauce guy, and I can't believe I've never thought of that. But
Oh, yeah, it's
wow,
great.
that's
Most
good.
of-
It's
that's-
good times,
that's sharp.
especially on a
yeah.
grilled dog, New York Rick. You
100%.
got to do it.
I'm a big spicy
so
mustard guy.
Yeah, man.
How do you get the hot dog to like stay where you need it to be? Right? Are we not talking like vinegar based? Like how do you keep it on the dog as opposed to like soaking down into the bun? Like, what's the-
sriracha.
Oh, but see, that's
sriracha.
the best part. That's the best part, because if it rolls around, then the inside of the bun gets coated with the hot sauce. So it's almost like you get a little bit of hot sauce and a little bit of hot dog, a little bit of bread. You get the trifecta in every single bite. You don't miss a thing, New York Rick. That's the beauty of
Okay.
hot sauce, which you don't get with ketchup and mustard because they're too thick of a condiment.
Yeah, Mike's
right.
spitting
I
facts.
dig it.
All facts from Mike.
I dig
And
it.
that talk about going out the right way. We got to go out like that.
Yeah, we do.
That's it.
The love of fight fans and their hot dog condiments, it will never be lost on me after tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Never. Respect all of it.
Do we know the date of the Kobayashi Joey Chestnut Netflix thing? That's coming up soon.
Labor
right?
Day. Labor Day.
Ooh,
Oh, man.
watch party.
Dude, yes,
Might have
I
to
have been
do
on
it.
that.
And with that,
Well, the music quit out early.
Yeah,
Music quit out early, but
I don't know why,
appreciate
but
it.
it's back.
There we go. We appreciate all y'all for tuning in. It was a super weird week. It was a really fun night. I had a lot of fun. I hope everyone out there enjoyed your 4th of July holiday. If you're still celebrating, it's the weekend. Why not? For all our American friends, I hope you all enjoyed the 4th. For all our non-American friends, we just had a great week and a great weekend. We love you guys. That's Eric Jackman to my left. That's Mike Heck to my right. We got Jose Youngs on the 1s and 2s. We got Casey out there in California at the fight. Keep it locked to MMA Fighting all week. We got the MMA Hour coming back on Monday. No on to the next one this weekend, right?
No, week off.
Yeah. Week off. These boys need a week off. We'll come back on Monday. We love y'all. I'm Sean O'Shadi. Peace.